The night air was thick with fog, curling around the skeletal trees like ghostly fingers. Officer Grant's flashlight cut through the darkness, illuminating patches of wet earth and fallen leaves. His K-9 Titan sat rigid at his side, ears pricked, nostrils flaring, but ignored every command. Each step deeper into the forest fell heavier, as if the darkness itself resisted them. Then, without warning, Titan bolted, dragging Grant toward a weathered, moss-covered cellar door half hidden under the roots of an ancient oak. Something unspeakable lay waiting beneath, and the hairs on Grant's neck stood on end. If you enjoy the tension and want the next chapter, the story will continue in cinematic detail. Scene by scene, fully immersive. The forest seemed alive, whispering with the faint rustle of leaves and the distant cry of an owl. Officer Grant tightened his grip on Titan's leash, but the German shepherd refused to respond. "Titan heel," he muttered, his voice taut with frustration. The dog's amber eyes glimmered in the beam of the flashlight, unblinking, unwavering, fixated on something deeper in the woods. The cold night air smelled of damp earth and decaying pine needles. Mist clung to the underbrush, swirling around their boots with every step. Grant's breath came in shallow bursts, uneven in rhythm, betraying the tension he tried to mask. Around him, the forest was silent but for Titan's low growl, a sound that seemed almost human in its warning. They were searching for a missing girl, Clara Hensley, last seen 2 nights ago at the edge of town, near the abandoned farms. The townsfolk whispered that the Hensleys' property had always been odd. Strange lights, sudden noises in the night. Children dared each other to approach, then ran screaming. Grant had dismissed most of it as small-town superstition until Clara vanished. "Why won't you listen?" Grant whispered. His hand brushed Titan's fur, rough from years of training. Usually, the dog obeyed immediately, but tonight, something was different, something primal. Titan's tail twitched once, then the dog darted forward, dragging Grant through the mist. Branches clawed at his jacket, snapping underfoot, and the mud sucked at his boots. The beam of the flashlight bounced over gnarled roots and rotting stumps. Grant stumbled, cursed under his breath, but Titan didn't falter. He was led to a massive oak, its trunk split and hollowed over decades. At its base, the earth sank slightly, an unnatural depression. And there it was, the edge of a weathered cellar door, almost invisible under a tangle of moss and roots. Grant dropped to his knees, chest pounding. His hand hovered over the iron latch, hesitant. "Titan, good boy," he breathed, though his voice was uneasy. The dog sat, staring at the door, as though it were waiting for something, or warning him not to open it. He glanced around. The fog thickened, blurring the outlines of trees. Somewhere in the distance, a branch snapped, not under their feet, but somewhere closer. He felt eyes on him. Human eyes. Cold, calculating. Grant's radio crackled. "Officer Grant, do you copy?" "Yeah," he replied, voice tight. "I found a cellar door. Might be related to Hensley's case." The voice on the other end hesitated. "Be careful, people say that place isn't normal." A shiver ran down his spine. He didn't mention the whispers that had reached his own ears, rumors of the Hensleys hiding more than livestock, rumors of secrets buried beneath that property for decades. Titan whined softly, circling the door. His paw scraped the rotting wood, then dug into the dirt, leaving a small trench. Grant's hands trembled as he lifted the latch. The hinges groaned like tortured metal. A blast of damp, cold air hit him. Beneath the ground, the scent of decay and something far more pungent, metallic, coppery, wafted upward. He shone his flashlight down. The steps leading into darkness were narrow and slick. Something deep inside him screamed to wait, to call for backup, but he couldn't. Titan nudged forward, descending first, a silent shadow against the black void. Grant followed, each footstep echoing off stone walls slick with moss and mold. The air grew heavier, almost viscous. His flashlight illuminated scratch marks along the walls. Old, deep, deliberate. And then a low, almost imperceptible sound. A muffled cry? He froze. Titan's ears twitched, his growl rising into a warning. "Clara?" Grant whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. No answer. Only the sound of dripping water, distant and uneven. Halfway down, the cellar widened into a cavernous room, its size unnatural. Rusted tools lay scattered, hammers, chains, and a chair tipped over. The walls were covered in faded symbols, crudely drawn in charcoal. Grant's stomach churned. Whoever had been here had been hiding, no, performing something. Titan stopped suddenly, nose to the ground. He barked once, short and sharp. Grant followed the line of Titan's gaze. A small trapdoor, nearly invisible, lay flush with the floor. Something about it felt wrong, deliberately hidden. And underneath, a faint sound, a slow, rhythmic tapping. Grant swallowed hard. His mind raced, questioning everything he thought he knew about this town, about human nature, about trust. He had entered the cellar as a rescuer, but already it felt like a snare. And Titan, the dog, was no longer just a partner. He was a guide, leading him towards something that didn't want to be found. A memory flickered in Grant's mind. The first night he'd seen Titan sniffing at shadows in the Hensley barn, growling at corners where nothing stood. He had laughed it off, thinking the dog sensitive, trained to detect more than humans could perceive. But now, deep underground, with a faint metallic scent of blood in the air, he realized Titan had been right all along. Grant took a slow breath and reached for the trapdoor. Titan pressed his body against Grant's leg, warning him or urging him. The scraping of metal against stone echoed like a scream. Whatever lay beneath, it had been waiting. And now, they were stepping straight into it. The trapdoor groaned as Grant pushed it open, revealing a steep ladder descending into near-complete darkness. The air was cooler here, damp, carrying the stench of mold and something far fouler he couldn't yet identify. Titan's paws tapped lightly on the wooden rungs, his body taut, ears swiveling toward the faintest sound. Grant's flashlight flickered, throwing shadows that danced across the walls. He climbed carefully, each step making a ladder creak, as if the cellar itself protested their intrusion. Below, the space widened again, and he caught the glint of metal, chains, hinges, and the dull shine of a lockbox half buried under debris. "Titan, you sure about this?" he whispered. The dog's ears twitched, a low growl vibrating in his chest, and he pressed forward without hesitation. Something about Titan's certainty made Grant swallow his fear, though the gnawing dread in his gut only deepened. The room's walls were lined with shelves, each stacked with jars and vials containing murky liquids. A faint, pungent odor of iron made Grant gag. Old newspapers littered the floor, yellowed and brittle, detailing events from decades ago, disappearances that had never been solved. One article caught his eye, a headline about the Hensleys, missing townsfolk, and rumors of occult practices. Grant's fingers trembled as he picked up the page, the ink smudged and faint. "Titan," he murmured again. The dog pawed at the floor near the lockbox, scratching at the dirt like trying to dig something out. Grant knelt beside him, prying the box open. Inside, he found a small bundle of tattered clothing and a locket. He flipped it open. A photo stared back at him. Clara Hensley. Her smile, frozen in a moment that now felt like a cruel lie. His heart pounded. "She's here, she's—" His words faltered. Titan barked sharply, jerking his gaze toward a corner shrouded in darkness. Grant followed the dog's line of sight and froze. A figure slumped against the wall. At first, it seemed like a mannequin, pale and still. But then a hand twitched. The figure groaned, and Grant realized the girl was alive. Weak, terrified, but alive. He lunged forward, but Titan barked again, low and warning, forcing him to halt. Something wasn't right. The room's corners were lined with shadows, and Grant's flashlight caught faint movement. Another figure, just out of reach. A man, tall, with sharp eyes and a calculating smile, stepped from the darkness. His clothes were worn, smeared with dirt, and his hands bore faint stains Grant couldn't identify. "Officer Grant," the man said, his voice smooth, almost cordial, but it carried an undertone that made Grant's skin crawl. "I wonder when you'd arrive." Grant's hand went to his holster, but Titan lunged, teeth bared. The man raised his hand slowly. "Easy, easy now. I'm not here to fight your dog. I think you misunderstand." "Misunderstand?" Grant's voice was sharp, brittle. "Clara, where's she?" The man tilted his head, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Clara is protected. You see, your little town has secrets, and some secrets deserve to remain buried." Grant's fists clenched, the basement air pressing on him, heavy with the scent of decay and lies. He realized this man wasn't just a criminal. He was someone who thrived in the gray spaces of morality, justifying unspeakable acts as preservation. Titan growled low, pacing between Grant and the man, a living barrier of instinct and loyalty. Grant's mind raced. He had trained for confrontations, for negotiations, for emergencies, but nothing had prepared him for this. The stakes weren't just life and death. They were moral, psychological, and deeply personal. "You don't understand," Grant said, his voice shaking slightly. "She's just a kid. She doesn't deserve." The man's smile faltered for the briefest moment, revealing a crack in his composed exterior. Deserve? Deserve has nothing to do with it. Power, fear, control, that's what matters. Grant's heart pounded. Titan barked again, then suddenly darted past him, snapping at the man's ankle. The man cursed, retreating toward a narrow passage at the back of the cellar. Grant followed, dragging his flashlight, desperate to close the distance. The passage led to a smaller chamber, the walls lined with shelves filled with jars that seemed to pulse under the dim light. Some contained preserved animals, others humans. Grant's stomach churned. His mind screamed for clarity, but all he could focus on was the girl, the fragile, terrified girl who had somehow survived this underground nightmare. Clara's eyes were wide, her body trembling. She didn't speak, only clutched a locket to her chest. Grant knelt beside her, whispering soothing words, though the sound fell hollow against the oppressive silence. Titan pressed against her, growling softly, as if promising protection. Then the man's voice came again, echoing off the stone walls. "You shouldn't have come down here." Grant's gaze met the man's, and in that instant, he saw something unexpected. Desperation. Fear. For the first time, the carefully constructed facade of control faltered. "You could leave," the man said, voice quieter now, almost pleading. "Walk away and nothing happens. But once you interfere, everything changes. Choices have consequences, officer." Grant's hand hovered over his holster, but he didn't draw. He knew violence here could be catastrophic. Not just for him, but for Clara. He also knew he couldn't retreat. Titan pressed against him, urging him forward. "Then consequences it is," Grant whispered, voice steady despite the churn of adrenaline and fear inside him. Titan barked, short and commanding, and the man flinched. In that heartbeat, Grant understood. The dog wasn't just leading him to the cellar. It had been guiding him through a maze of lies, fear, and moral ambiguity, toward a confrontation that would test every ounce of his courage and judgment. And in the shadows, the truth waited, painful, horrifying, and unavoidable. Grant's pulse raced as he assessed the cramped, shadowed chamber. Clara's eyes clung to him, wide with fear, while Titan's low growl resonated like a warning bell through the damp stone. The man in front of them, Harlan Voss, as Grant finally remembered from town whispers, smiled thinly, but his eyes betrayed panic. A predator realizing the net had tightened. "You don't understand," Harlan said, voice trembling slightly. "I only ever wanted control to protect them." "Protect who?" Grant demanded, voice taut. "You've been holding her down here, torturing people. How is that protection?" Harlan's jaw tightened. Protection from the truth, from what they'd do if they knew. Grant scanned the room. Jars of preserved animals, remnants of the town's missing children, cryptic symbols smeared along the walls. Every detail screamed decades of obsession and secrecy. But Titan shifted, nudging him toward a corner, where a loose stone jutted slightly from the wall. The dog's insistence was clear. The next clue, the final piece, was there. Grant crouched, pressing the stone aside. Behind it, a hidden compartment revealed another lockbox, older, heavier, covered in dust and dried mud. He pried it open. Inside, photographs, documents, and a stack of letters, all meticulously cataloged. Names of townspeople, dates, and connections. A record of Harlan's manipulation, blackmail, and control. Grant's stomach turned. This wasn't just a cellar of horrors. It was the archive of a man who had ruled the town through fear, hidden for decades, and whose control had finally begun to slip. Harlan took a step back, eyes darting nervously. You don't understand the web. Once it's pulled, it all unravels. The town, the families. Grant's voice hardened. It ends now. Titan growled and darted forward, teeth bared. Harlan stumbled back, tripping over a chair, and for the first time, he seemed genuinely terrified. In the chaos, Grant grabbed Clara, pulling her toward the ladder. Titan stayed ahead, circling, herding them, ensuring no sudden attack could intercept their escape. But as they ascended, a second figure emerged from the shadows, a deputy from the local station, someone Grant had trusted, Deputy Reynolds. His gun raised, finger tight on the trigger. Grant stepped back. He's my friend. Grant froze. The betrayal cut sharper than the Cellar's chill. Friend. Grant's voice was incredulous. He's been hiding the truth, torturing kids. Reynolds hesitated, eyes flicking to Harlan, then to the photographs Grant held. I didn't know the extent. His voice cracked. I only want to control the chaos, keep the town safe. Titan barked, ferocious and commanding, snapping Reynolds out his moral paralysis. Grant's grip on Clara tightened, and the tension was electric. Safe? Safe as leaving her down there? Safe as letting him keep the secret. Reynolds lowered his weapon slightly, confusion and fear warring in his expression. Grant's voice softened, almost pleading. You can do the right thing. Help me or step aside. For a heartbeat, Reynolds' loyalty wavered. Then, with a grunt, he dropped the gun. Fine, I'll back you up. But the hesitation had cost them precious seconds. Harlan surged forward, attempting to tackle Grant, desperate to reclaim control. Titan lunged, teeth snapping at Harlan's arm, forcing him back, snarling with protective precision. The struggle was chaotic. Dust, debris, and fear mingled in the dim light, but the combined force of Grant and Titan proved unstoppable. Harlan fell to the floor, groaning, restrained. Grant's heart pounded as he dragged Claire up the ladder, her small hands gripping his sleeve. Outside, the fog had thickened, curling around the forest like a shroud. They emerged to the faint glow of approaching headlights. Backup, the town sheriff finally responding to Grant's earlier radio call. Clara's sobs broke through the night, but Grant held her tight, whispering assurances, his chest heaving with relief and exhaustion. Titan sat nearby, alert, unwavering, as if the tension still clung to the air around him. As deputies secured Harlan and Reynolds, the truth spilled into the open. Families learned of the secrets that had festered beneath the town for decades. Some were shocked, some enraged, but none could ignore the quiet heroism of a man and his K-9 who refused to be misled by appearances or loyalty alone. Later, standing at the edge of the forest, Grant held the locket Clara had clutched, the proof of innocence, the symbol of survival. Titan nudged him gently, and for a moment, the world felt almost normal. Grant looked down at the dog, amber eyes gleaming in the faint morning light. Good boy, he whispered, voice thick with emotion, not just for saving Clara, but for guiding him through the shadows of deceit, fear, and betrayal. Titan's tail wagged once, slow, deliberate, a quiet acknowledgement of duty fulfilled. The town would never be the same. Harlan's secrets were exposed. Trust had been broken and rebuilt in the span of a single night. And Grant realized something deeper. Courage wasn't just about confronting evil. It was about facing the gray spaces of loyalty, morality, and human frailty, and emerging on the other side with capacity to heal, even when the scars remained. As the sun began to rise over the misty treetops, the cellar and its horrors receded into memory. But the quiet bond between man and dog, forged in fear and sharpened by truth, endured, a reminder that even in darkness, instinct, loyalty, and courage would illuminate the path forward. The forest was silent again, but for Grant, Titan, and Clara, it was no longer threatening. It was a testament to survival, to the messy, painful complexity of human nature, and to the unspoken heroism of those willing to face what others could not.